Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of your Business on Purpose podcast. I am your host, Donette Palmore, and today I have a guest with me. We are going to be talking about how to build wealth through franchise ownership. Super excited about this conversation, but before we get there, let me introduce my guest. Brittany Lincoln is Franchise Connector, a partner at Limitless Franchise Growth, and the founder of Females in Franchising, a dynamic platform dedicated to empowering women in the franchising industry. With over 13 years of experience spanning home services, beauty, and medical franchises, Brittany has built a reputation as a connector, educator, and strategist in the franchising world. She is passionate about providing a space for women to collaborate, learn from industry experts, and grow both personally and professionally. Brittany, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm excited about this conversation, but before we get started, can you tell us just a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yes. So I always like to go back, not all the way. I won't start from the very beginning, but I'll start. I graduated from college in 2009 with my business degree. Not a good time to be looking for a job. I landed a receptionist job with an insurance company and quickly learned that would not be the career path I wanted to take. And so I ended up starting my own business. It was not a franchise, just from the ground up with a friend. We had a retail business in downtown Denver. I saw a gap in the marketplace. There were no hallmarks or places to buy, cards, gifts, things like that. And it was amazing. I worked in retail all through college. Part of why I wanted to own a store is I felt like, hey, if I could shop for a living, wouldn't that be
That would be fun.
and it was. I always tell people everything was cracked up to be going to market in, New York and LA. But like many entrepreneurs, or I would say many first-time entrepreneurs, things quickly got messy, and I learned a lot of lessons. We had a nightclub above us. We got flooded multiple times in our first year. My business partner was a dear friend, and sometimes business and friendship mixes, and sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, it didn't. We are friends today, but at the time, had some disagreements about moving the store. And so that was my first venture into business ownership. And after that, I totally fell into franchising, which is very typical. And I fell into franchise sales with a home services company. But it felt like the next best thing because I had known sort of the freedom, the flexibility, the passion and pleasure of having my own business. And now I was helping other people fulfill that dream through franchising, which true entrepreneurship is amazing. And it's right for some people, but it's scary and it's lonely. And unfortunately, the stats are pretty glaring. It doesn't always work out. Franchising gives people the ability to become an entrepreneur while still having a franchisor and support and even peers, right, doing the same thing. And so I fell in love with it. And I've been in the industry for 13 years. And so last year, my colleagues and I from a different company formed Limitless Franchise Growth. We help emerging franchisors scale and grow. But through all of my time, what I have seen is women are very underrepresented in franchising, whether you look at people that work, in the executive roles and C-suite like me, whether you look at franchise ownership. Today, there's about a little shy of 4,000 individual franchisors or franchise companies out there, but there are over 800,000 individual franchise businesses in the US. I mean, they make up a big part of the
Yeah.
GDP, employ tons and tons of people, and yet less than 30% of those businesses are owned by women. So whether you look at the franchisors and people working in the industry, whether you look at the franchisees who own the businesses, we're not we're sadly as women not very represented. And so I wanted to shine a light on that. And so through Limitless Franchise Growth, my business partners and I, we help emerging franchisors. We help them scale. We help bring in new franchisees. But through Females in Franchising, I'm creating this great online, sort of membership platform, if you will, and building out a Circle app where I can bring women in franchising together because there are, and I think you're a part of some of these groups, I would say really amazing networks and platforms for female entrepreneurs. And then there are also like the chiefs and the trusts that are more for female executives. Franchising is like this middle ground, right? Like we don't quite fit in with the entrepreneurs because if you own a franchise, you do have your franchisor. And when you work in franchising, you have to follow, Federal Trade Commission rules, and there's nuances that aren't quite the same as the corporate world. And so that's a passion project of mine that I'm working on. And then through doing that, I just want to shine a light on franchising, whether you've been interested in owning a franchise, whether you have a small business and people have told you, hey, you should franchise this. I just want to bring more emphasis to females out there thinking about franchising, whether it's buying a franchise, turning their business into a franchise, or even working in the industry, because it's been so good to me. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. How exciting though. It's almost like a business in a box, right?
that
You
is,
could just
you're speaking the language already. That's what we love to say.
pick it up and go. So you said there was only 30% of women own the franchises?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I will say, I mean, so of like the nearly 800,000, individual franchise businesses out there, my understanding it's a little hard sometimes, the statistics and how they're put together, but I actually believe that it's like minorities own about 30% of those businesses, and women fall into that. So that's why I say it's likely, sadly, that number is probably, a little bit less. And I think a lot of it, honestly, is just there's not a lot of information out there about just how wide of a spectrum there is when it comes to franchises. People often think of the fast food chains that probably come to mind for most people when you say franchise, but there's franchises you can start from home. There's franchises where you could keep your corporate job and still own it. There are so many different opportunities out there. I would say there's pretty much a franchise for anything and anyone, if that's a path you're looking to go down. And it can be a great, either transition out of the corporate world if you're just done with, working for the man. It can be just another pillar in your investment strategy. A lot of people are getting a little disillusioned with, keeping all of their money in the market, or they've tried real estate investing, or they're just ready for something new. And so in my 13 years, I've seen a lot of different people. And I would say I'm starting to see a lot of the 30 and under consider this, because unlike their parents who, maybe worked for the same company for a long time, they're going, I don't want that path, or I want to own something myself, but I'm, 25. A franchise is great for someone like that, where maybe they have their business degree, but they've never owned a business before.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I think about franchise, I mean, the first thing that scares me would be like all the fees, right? So
Yeah. There.
tell us more about that, because I think maybe that does scare people. I mean, you've talked to more people about it than me. Is that like an obstacle that they feel like, oh, I got to pay somebody, part of my profits?
Yeah. So fees are going to be common. There's going to be typically an upfront franchise fee that you pay to secure the rights to that franchise. And a lot of times it's to a territory, right, that would be protected. So it's not just a free for all. But then there's always, I think, probably more so what you're even referring to, an ongoing royalty. Sometimes there's marketing fund contributions, like, hey, rising tide lifts all ships. We'll have all the franchisees pitch in, and that way we can market this brand on a national level and everyone will benefit from it. I will say this varies widely. I will tell you, for most of the brands that I've represented, the royalties are usually around 7% of gross revenue. Ad funds somewhere between 1 and 2%. So yes, you're, for the entrepreneurs out there that are used to, right, seeing all the fruits of their labor, keeping all of the profits, you're giving up, anywhere in the realm of maybe, let's say, 7 to 9%. However, for those people that don't have that great idea, right, that don't, have any business ownership experience, I would say when you do start to do the math, and I will say anyone out there considering franchising from an investment standpoint, find a consultant. I am connected with so many, so reach out to me and I can connect you with someone. These are like the real estate agents of franchising. They'll profile you, they'll present you with brands they've vetted. So know that you don't have to go it alone. But you are going to go through a whole due diligence process. The franchisor will actually require you to do that. Even if you said, hey, I'll buy one today, they'll say, whoa, back the truck up. Let's make sure you research this. Let's make sure you build financial projections. Let's make sure you talk to franchise owners and do you see yourself as one of them? Do you like the company culture? I mean, there's a lot
Mm.
I would say that goes into someone researching a franchise. Oftentimes we'll put people through like a 6 to 8 week process of
Oh, wow.
educating them, right? But there is that cost benefit analysis of, is the juice worth the squeeze, and is this going to hit my ROI goals? But I will say, at least in my experience, if you were to stack up all the costs of creating your own, and you choose food business, fitness business, home service business, of doing it yourself, even if you spread those royalties and things like that out over a 10-year span, you're not going to pay anywhere near in those royalties what it would cost you to create that from the ground up. Because when it comes to things like technology, like some of the best franchisors out there right now have tech stacks that if you were to build it yourself, you're talking millions of dollars, right? Like just
Wow. Yeah.
for the tech stack, let alone. And so this is where franchising can make a lot of sense, because oftentimes you're getting a known brand, you're getting all the processes, procedures, they've stepped in the potholes, they've not figured out everything. Franchisors are
Yeah.
not perfect, but you're getting to buy into things, or even just buying power, right? Like I've seen brands where they're able to get off the shelf technology that you and I, if we had independent businesses, would pay $3,000 a month for. And if you're part of the franchise, you're paying like 300. So
Mm.
when you start to do the math, it can make sense. Now, in the long run, if you exited, is that where you might be able to see, right, a bigger liquidity event if you own something outright? I'd have to say yes, potentially. But I've also seen people build multiple either units or expand their service franchises and still exit for a multiple. I'd say not usually as high of a multiple as what independent businesses might get selling to private equity. But there can still be that exit. And sometimes being a part of a franchise gives you a lot more clout and value on the resale market
Mm.
than,
Yeah.
Brittany's business that just I own and just I built.
Yeah. So, well, and you also have to look, they've done all the work for you. Um, so you're just almost, like I said, stepping into something and kind of taking over. You're just kind of learning the ropes and taking over, which is nice too, right? It's almost like you're paying for a college education, right? Like you're paying for that the work that somebody else has done, and you get to take from their knowledge. So thinking about, building wealth, and maybe another obstacle might be, well, I don't want to spend a ton of time in them, because the last thing we want to do is we don't go into entrepreneurship to be tied to it, even though sometimes that's a lot of times what happens. But we do go into it, like you said earlier, for the freedom and for what it brings as a business owner. So what would you say about that? Like if someone says, well, I don't want to spend a ton of time in it, um, how would you have that conversation with them?
Yeah. So I would say, again, as wide of the spectrum is of, are you doing something that you can start from home that's very low startup, to brick and mortar and could be $1 million to get in, right? The time commitment spectrum is huge too. The easiest example I always use is, think about vending machines. There are vending machine franchises out there. You could pay someone to go and fill your vending machine, and that literally might be an hour a month of you talking to that person and saying, hey, did you go refill the vending machine? So I would put that on the end of the spectrum of, there are absentee, what we like to call absentee owner franchise opportunities, where it would be very, very little, from the time commitment standpoint. Now, are you going to make $1 million a year off of vending machines? Probably not, unless maybe you
Unless
own.
you have a lot of them.
That's also the interesting, right, tipping of the scales of, like, less time and lower initial investment can sometimes mean not as big of an ROI.
Mm,
On the other end of the spectrum, I would say, like, home service is getting a lot of love right now. Millennials, people like me, are not very handy. I paid someone to hang all of the pictures in my house. I'm not handy. I don't know how to do it. You have people like Cody Sanchez out there preaching,
I
about
love her.
buying. I love her. She's actually invested in some home service franchises. I mean, she is shining a huge light on franchising. and the industry. But I will say a lot of those home service franchises, you've got to be more owner operator to start, because oftentimes you're the one going out meeting with the homeowners about the window cleaning, about the HVAC, and then you have your, technicians, your tradespeople. And then there's kind of the middle of the road. Some people call it executive model. Some people call it semi-absentee. Some people call it manage the manager. I'd say most of the brands I've worked with fall in that category where, look, you're still launching a business. As much as franchising is the plan, the playbook, there's still a lot to be done. And I would say the best way of looking at franchising is you're still in business for yourself. The buck stops with you, but you're not by yourself. You do have your franchisor, you get training, you get the bouncing ball to follow, right? But execution is everything. And it's usually what separates the top performers from the bottom, because everyone's got the same systems, right? It's just, if we have the same tools and you wield them better, you're gonna have a better result. So I'd say that middle ground is what I see a lot of people attracted to, because a lot of people, as much as they like the idea of not spending a lot of time, even if you're only putting 50, to 100 grand in, it's still your hard-earned money. Not many people want to do that and just be like, oh, well, hope it works out. So that tends to be great because you can be, I would say, more hands-on in the beginning. But again, I have people that work full-time corporate jobs that invest in these manager-run, businesses, and they do it by technology. They stop by nights and weekends, or, they invest their time in it nights and weekends. And it's always kind of a bell curve, right? Of like, as you're launching it, you're spending a lot of time. And then over time, because you typically have a manager or an area manager, as soon as you gain the trust and rapport in that person, just like if you're an entrepreneur and you hire that chief of staff or that COO, right? You're going to have to babysit them in the beginning.
Yeah.
But over time, right, you're going to ride that wave down, and you are going to have something that's a pretty well-oiled machine that you don't have to devote a lot of time to. And I've seen, franchise owners be like, yeah, so I run payroll every other week and talk to my manager every Friday, and they kind of don't need me anymore. I've like worked myself out of this franchise. So that would be the conversation I would have, or what I would share is, if your feeling is, okay, there's lots of different franchises out there, but do I have to put in 40, 50 hours a week to all of them? No, you don't. And there's a big spectrum there, and you can find what works for you and for, just the logistics of your schedule.
Yeah. So something you said about, just having, spending some time in your business. And I just did a podcast on this about, if you need to have a fractional CFO, but also that doesn't mean that you completely leave your business. Like you need people to report to you. You need to know what, they're doing. Because if you know that if you completely remove yourself from your business, they say when the owner is away, the mice will play, right?
It's like children. When mom and dad aren't home, something's going to happen, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, adults do it as well.
Yes.
But it's almost like anything. You invest time up front. You get to know the franchise, the culture, all these things. I know Dutch Bros, you have to work there for a year before you can even be considered for a franchise. So, learning the culture, learning the systems, and then being able to, teach your team that as well.
Yeah.
Because I think you need to know from the bottom to the top. I really think that's important. So that's where a great consultant comes in, right? Because you're going to say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And then you guys are going to go do the shopping for us, which I love. That's why I love brokers. You guys are like a franchise broker because they do a lot of the work for us. And they're not charging us. Well, with insurance, obviously they get paid by the insurance companies, but there's other people that, yes, they're going to get paid for the service as they should because they're doing all the work we don't want to do. But just having that professional come alongside you and, just listening to you in all this, like, it doesn't have to be like you have to quit everything and put everything into the franchise. Like you can find one that you said you can work nights and weekends, or you can maybe do it a couple days a week or whatever while you're working your full time and transitioning. But it can also be like, an addition to your portfolio. You
Yeah.
know, it could be generational wealth. It doesn't have to be something you sell. It could be something you pass on, which I think is great. Or even tell your kids to go work in it. Like, go do some hard work, go learn what that is and earn some money and learn the business so that when you take over, you're going to know the ins and outs of it. Do you find that a lot of people use that to build generational wealth?
Yes. It is, I think, so inspiring to see. I when I started in the industry 13 years ago, I would say almost everyone I was working with was 50 and up, right? Like they had reached that point in their corporate career, whether they'd been downsized a few times or they're being passed up for promotions because, hey, they're a little bit older, they're nearing retirement. And that is, as I mentioned before, it's totally shifted. I mean, I talk to people in their 20s now. Now, most of them, mom and dad are going to help. But I love how many either kids are thinking about this and then asking parents, hey, would you help me do this? Or I have a lot of parents that are going, I can't give my kids my corporate job. So what can I do, right, to help them out? Because maybe I don't want them to have to live through, right, this corporate grind that I've had to live through. So I have seen people make it a family affair, and it has been so neat. I mean, literally to the point where, the parents buy in and the kids are in middle school or high school, and so they're working the front desk or they're going out on, meetings with, the parents. They're learning the business from the ground up to them literally transferring it to them or then expanding and buying, additional territories and more locations because the kids worked in it. And I mean, some of them go to college and come back and do it. I've seen some people where the kids are like, this is what I want to do. I want to work in this business with you, mom and dad. I don't think I want to go to college, which some people are, now considering. So yes, it can be a really great way. And again, part of the beauty of buying into a franchise and having that support. And, you mentioned that they have learned, right, a lot and they're imparting that knowledge on you.
Hmm.
But the best franchisors continue to learn, right? They
Hmm.
understand that they have to continue to evolve. They have to up their game with technology, with support. They have to stay on the cutting edge. Otherwise, right, they can't get lazy or they're
Yeah,
franchisees. So
you have to
you
pivot.
have a bit of that safety net, right? Of like, my franchisor is going to continue to do this. And so, yes, I have seen people, bring their kids in, give it to their kids. And again, right, I mean, an independent business, you could absolutely, transfer to your kids. But a franchise, right, might allow them to continue to grow, to, duplicate in a way that you can't always do with an independent business. So even if you just own one, your kids might be able to expand it, which I think is an exciting way of,
Yeah,
transferring generational wealth.
I love that. So, also when I think about franchises, I'm like, okay, how hard is it to get a franchise? So, is there a simple way to get started? Tell us what the steps are.
Yes. So I will say the best franchisors out there are going to look at it as a two-way street, right? Of, hey, as much as you are here looking at my franchise and interested, I'm looking at you. Are you going to be right for us? Are you going to be a good steward of the brand? So I would say number one, finding one of those consultants. So what we do at Limitless Franchise Growth, we're not consultants, but we work with tons of franchise consultants. And you're spot on. They're called franchise brokers all the time because that really is what they do. So that would be number one. I would say find them, whether you go through myself, females in franchising. I mean, you can research, and there are a lot of really amazing female franchise consultants where they've been a franchisee themselves. So they can walk the walk and talk the talk with you and say, hey, I'm not just here to help you find a franchise. I've lived this. I can share, what I've experienced and why I chose the brand that I chose. But they will, like you suggested, and you're spot on, they will get to know you. They will vet you. They will say, how much time can you commit? What things do you like? Is there something that you say, no way I could ever own X? Right. I always like to joke with people. There's usually two types of franchise candidates. There's the person that says, I don't care what it is, as long as it meets my ROI goals, right? As long as it makes money, I would invest in a porta potty cleaning franchise. And then there's the person that says, no, I've got to believe in it. I've got to be passionate about it. I've got to consume the product, service, whatever it is. And I don't think either is more right than the other, but that's usually one of the first things a franchise consultant's going to ask you is, hey, which which bucket do you fall into? Neither is wrong, neither is more right. And then, right, they'll present you with those concepts, and then you can go through that whole due diligence process. But there'd be three things that I would tell people to think about. One, the brand. Even if you're the person that says, I don't care what it does it make money? Do you like the brand? Do you, you know, if you can get excited about porta potty cleaning, great. If you see that as a need and it has to be done. So there's the brand, then there's the numbers. Everyone's going to have a different ROI goal or how they look at it. Or, some people are comfortable with payback period of X and other people are comfortable with payback period of Y. And also, is it an investment pillar, or is it I need this to replace my income and support me financially? So do the numbers make sense for you? And your consultant will ask you that and should match you up with brands. But still, you have to do the performing yourself to say, yeah, the numbers make sense. And then lastly, there's the people behind it, because buying in a franchise is kind of like getting married. You're going to sign typically at least a 5, if not 10-year franchise agreement. And while you can sell, and there's always, sort of the shoot, to get out, you're getting into bed with these people. These are the people that are going to support you, that you're going to do business with. And I always say it's kind of like a tripod. If you can't have one or two of those things without the other, you got to have all three. You got to have the trifecta. So that's what I advise people on, is when you do start looking at a brand, make sure it checks all three of those boxes. Because even if the numbers are great, if you don't love the people,
or the brand,
or the brand, right?
or,
and there are some, yeah, it's probably not going to be great for you.
Yes, I totally agree. Like, I would not invest in a McDonald's because I don't eat their food.
Fair. I'm with you. I tell people that all the time, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
everyone wants a Chick-fil-A. I wouldn't own one because I don't eat their food. That doesn't mean you're wrong for liking their business
Right.
model, wanting to own one. But there are people that would say, I would never own that because I want to be part of making people healthy. I want to have a positive impact on people's lives, and that's okay too. And there's a franchise for you no matter what your passion is.
I love that. So it's just like a spectrum of franchises for the spectrum of people, needs, wants, all the things. So I love that. And I love that this is something, not simple, but not easy, that they can start getting involved in. And it could just be a start of something huge. And like you said, another pillar to your investment portfolio, because they said we should be diverse. And as you said earlier, people say, we're in uncertain times. We're always in uncertain times. We never know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter. Like, we don't know. So just having a diverse portfolio is important. And, having different streams of revenue is important. I think the average millionaire has 7 to 8 streams of revenue. And so it's important to have all these different types of revenue, because you never know when one's going to take a dip, or, you just don't know what's going to happen. No matter what, we don't know what's going to happen, because people say, well, and I said, okay, look at Sears, look at Blockbuster. Like, we don't know when things are going to happen. Toys R Us, which I'm very heartbroken and bitter about because I don't get to take my grandson to Toys R Us. But, we just have to look at those things, and, anything can happen. But if somebody's saying, okay, I need to talk to her because sounds like this is something I want to do, I want to know more, how can they find you?
Yeah. So a couple of ways you can reach out to me. I would say LinkedIn's probably the easiest if you find me on LinkedIn. And if you search Brittany Lincoln, Limitless Franchise Growth, right, I should come right up. But if you go to www.femalesandfranchising.com, you can submit a form on there as well. But those are probably the two easiest ways. And if people do want my email, it's Brittany, but if you see how it's spelled a little bit different, TTNEY @limitlessfranchisegrowth.com. You can also email me. I love talking about franchising. I love geeking out over franchising. I have conversations with founders. I have conversations with people interested in investing. I want to shine a light on this. And guys, you can get in on franchising too, but females are underrepresented. And so I'm trying to, make sure that more women know about it, just across all those different facets that we've talked about today.
I love it. I love it. Let's get out there, ladies, and own some businesses. Like, let's make this happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time and your wisdom, and just getting to really hear about more about this because it's something I've looked at before too. So thank you guys for being here. Wouldn't have a show without you. Appreciate it. So remember, conducting business on purpose not only fuels your success, but it also propels you towards a purposeful life. So until next time, embrace your journey of intentional business and purposeful living. This podcast is dedicated to you and all the incredible women out there breaking chains, pushing through, and striving to make it all work. Your support truly means the world to me. Could you do me a favor? Be a gem and leave a review. It will help us reach even more women, making a bigger impact. Your feedback is invaluable, and I would genuinely appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, ensuring you never miss an episode. Until next week, live a purposeful life in both your business and your finances.